Let's do a round of lemon cakes. How did you rate this one?
If I were going based on how much I enjoyed the story, it would be a very different number than whether I think the story is good. I mean, it was really when I was picked it up to reread, it was like I got a paragraph in, and then it was like she rang the doorbell, and he looked through the people, and it was like the same like gut punch that hit him sort of hit me. I was like, oh, this. So, but as you know, in terms of did he make me feel what I think he wanted me to? I think he definitely did. So, pretty high, 4.5 maybe like that.
Um, yeah, I gave it 3.75, kind of for the same reason, except I weighted the emotional response a little heavier. It's a good story. I think he does what he intends to do, but it's just so unenjoyable that I didn't want to rate it much higher than that.
Yeah, I actually gave it a 3.75 also. I mean, I think it was kind of spoiled for me. Like, I knew she was a ghost pretty early on because the illustration at the beginning of the story shows a ghost caressing a man's face.
That's
So
stupid.
that was, yeah. But I mean, it was a gut punch, and it really kind of made me think back on people I knew 10 years ago, and how far apart I've sort of fallen from a lot of people. But it was a good ghost story. This was the first real just contemporary, like, regular straight horror story of Martin's that I've read. Everything else has been sci-fi or fantasy, and I really enjoyed it. It just reminded me, it felt like a classic Twilight Zone episode. But I gave it a solid 3.75. It wasn't one of my favorites, but it's not my least favorite either.
So are you the Ted or the Melody?
I actually think I'm probably somewhere in the middle.
I think for me, I'd probably give it like a 3.5. It's good. It's like a good creepy story, but it may just be that, like, I know what it's like to have friends you drift away from. Everybody does, but like I'm not, like, I haven't quite reached the same point as the character in the story, so it's a little hard for me to put myself in his shoes quite as much. But also, just like, it's good, but it's not, for me. It's not a particularly, like, great one of his stories. It's creepy, and the ghost part is clever, and it's one of his more traditional. But it's not one of the ones where, like, I reread through Dreamsongs, and this isn't a story that I've reread.
Yeah, I'd give it a solid 3.5 as well. Pretty much agree with everything you said. It actually was his first big horror one. I think he did. It was inspired by Lisa Tuttle, who was doing her own work, and he decided to try it out. So that shows. I mean, he's done better horror elsewhere, but it's a solid story and worth covering, I think. So. All right, so we're basically going to jump in and just have a spoiler-filled chat about it. But other than Greg, who was spoiled from the artist's work, were any of you, like, get that she might be a ghost or something supernatural going on, or did it hit you with a surprise by the end?
I didn't really see it coming, but I definitely felt like when it did happen, it just seemed a little heavy-handed. It just, his kind of descent into panic kind of tipped his hand, I thought.
Yeah, I actually sort of agree with that. I had, I don't know, at least partially forgotten on the reread that it was a ghost story. And I sort of feel like I don't know, it doesn't really need to be. I don't know that it adds that much. Like, to me, I felt like it was more about just sort of the self-examination of, looking at your own past and, like, am I a bad person? Like, what is my obligation? Like, what are promises I made, 10 years ago worth? Like, how much do I have to spend to keep them? That kind of thing. Like, that stuff was interesting and good. The ghost story stuff, like when I was, talking about, like, the gut punch and stuff before, the ghost story stuff sort of rolls off me. Like, I didn't really feel that particularly. That didn't bother me.
Sorry.
There's a ghost nearby.
Yeah,
You can detect it.
that's much worse than
I can't find my mute button. I know.
So if you look at early in the story, there is kind of hints. I mean, he's like, usually he gets a warning when people come in.
Yeah, with a doorman.
Yeah.
Surprise. Yeah.
But then the Jehovah's Witnesses got in.
Got in as well, yeah.
Maybe they were ghosts.
But I mean, like, after them in particular, security is even tighter, probably. But, like, can't let this happen again. Plus, like, the Jehovah's Witness might have been able to, like, bluff his way in, but you can kind of tell she's on the down low right now. Like, the doorman probably wouldn't let her in.
Sure, yeah.
Like, just the visual description is really hitting
Yeah.
the story. It's just like she's basically like a gaunt skeleton kind of person and fading, and
Yeah, like these are the first of the stories we've done. These are I think both of them, they kind of really just have unlikable narrators. I mean, I guess Rob a little bit from Song of Laya wasn't like a real hero, but these are the first two that I
He was a
didn't like.
murderer, Greg. A murderer.
Rob was a murderer? What did I
Uh,
miss?
Nothing. I had a theory on the forums, but don't
Oh,
worry.
that's right. Yeah, sorry. But anyway, like I didn't like them, and I felt like it was Melody's story more than his, because he really just was doing everything he could just to get her out of there. And I felt like it would have been more powerful if she hadn't been a ghost, like if she had actually killed herself in his bathtub and he had to deal with it, rather than just getting freaked out and haunted on the phone a little bit. But I did like it, but the ghost stuff is a little less of a gut punch than if she actually had killed herself in the
But
bathtub.
did she kill herself basically when they didn't? Did nobody contact her back? Like when from that telegram? Was that?
I
What it was?
think that's what we're meant to believe. Where she sent that telegram to the four of them, and no one responded.
So no sympathy for him, Greg?
Some sympathy, I can understand, but I don't know. He's just like, he just wants her out of there. I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, it's not. It's on. It's on
Not the
top of
first
a
time that
mountain
she
of
came, right?
history. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's done a
Yeah.
lot, and she's been there a lot. I definitely. I mean, like, I'm not saying I wanted to be best pals with him or anything, but I had a lot of sympathy for him. I didn't feel like he was doing anything wrong. I mean, it was a place he'd been in before, and it's not like he didn't feel bad about it a lot. Like he wished. He wasn't unreflective about it. He thought about, like, what do I owe her? What have I done in the past, and things like that. I don't know. I felt sorry for him.
Yeah, it sounded like they all, the other three of the group, gave it years and years worth of effort to bring her back. And, I was totally on his side. I mean, yeah, he was cruel, but I wanted to just punch her in the face.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you have no choice. I mean, it's sort of, I mean, you either devote yourself to this person who's, it's like a drowning person who's dragging you down, right? I mean, you either devote your life to that, or else you have to cut it. And if you decide to cut ties, then, being cruel is part of that, sort of inextricably.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
It's also
tragic too. I mean, like she was such a free spirit in college, and it just went all downhill for her afterwards.
yeah. It's also like it's one of those things where it's pretty interesting from a psychological perspective because he is pretty cruel, but he's also right. Like you have to cut people off at a certain point. Like it's something that's really hard for people to learn, but like at a certain point, like you have to take care of yourself. You can't just like take care of a friend who's as much of a disaster as Melody is forever.
Mm.
Yeah.
What do you suppose would have happened if he'd have just been like, okay,
Yeah, I
like then
was
he's got
wondering
this
that
ghost
too.
living in his house?
Yeah.
well, I thought it was kind of like like she was testing him. Actually, I had
Yeah.
a note here, like, was this just a test that he failed? Like, did maybe some of the other friends might have passed it, or it seems like she's gotten to one of them so far. But like, if he had given her money or let her stay, like maybe she would have just disappeared and found peace or something like that. Would have been a worse story,
Yeah.
but I felt like he did fail it. If it was a test, he definitely
Yeah,
failed.
well, when he was trying to force her out and she was accepting, she's like, "At least won't you remember me or whatever?" I think maybe if he'd been given a bit there or
Yeah.
something, then she might not have done
Yeah.
that thing. But seems like even the third person is screwed over now. Like either she failed the test or she's
Well,
having a
it
hard
seems like
time.
she's in the middle of the test or something, or well, that was my take.
Hmm.
So she still has a chance to pass or fail, but
You know what I liked about it is like, I mean, there's a ghost story in here, and then he goes back to the office and he's like, "I'm gonna think about this like logically and try to like deduce what's going on."
yeah,
He sticks to his guns
yeah,
in the middle of an irrational situation.
yeah. He seems to have done better than his friend who was in the hospital
Yeah,
after having a
Yeah.
nervous breakdown or
but he
whatever.
can't take a shower anymore. He's afraid to
Well,
go in.
obviously there's some problems.
It's scary too, and not just scary. Like the part that's scary isn't just the ghost part. It's her. She's what's scary. Like the idea of like someone ruining your life like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having you
I
just
mean, yeah, that's a lot scarier to me than the ghost part.
Yeah,
Yeah, I couldn't believe he let
Exactly.
her stay and like took off to work.
yeah.
Yeah, he did have that really good line where he said, it was like after he had gone out and come back, and he says, "I want you out of my life, and when you're gone, I'm gonna forget you as quick as I can, because lady, you are one hell of a bad memory." That's just it's awful the way he's treating her, but I do understand, but I kind of feel like he sees that like this could have happened to any one of them, and just that it happened to her, maybe there is some kind of responsibility, but at the same time, it is kind of unrealistic to expect people when they're 20, 21 years old to to stick by what they said.
yeah.
when they were having a drunk orgy at the time.
Yeah, and
Did
it's an extreme example of what happens to a lot of it's everyone pretty much. Like you distance from people. This is the most extreme example, but you get that distancing of the people you used to know.
Did we get an idea of how long it's been? Like 20 years?
I think it's supposed to be like that. They were friends in like the mid 60s, and I think this is supposed to be like 79, 1980. So it's probably been like 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, like George, and in this and in other works as well, you kind of see he talks. It's kind of like a reflection of him in some ways. Like he had a lot of stuff going on in the '60s, early '70s, and then I think this is late '70s when it was written. So I think he drew upon his own experiences of living with people in houses and stuff. I don't know how much he drew upon it. He's also drawn upon, but yeah.
Yeah, the other hint that she was a ghost was probably when he comes back and she says, "I sold some stuff to get some coke," and the stereo's still there, because he's like, "What? I didn't notice that she didn't actually steal anything."
Yeah.
So that would have been one of the first things she would have taken.
But she like her artwork wasn't in the garbage. The dishes were washed. There was like no trace of anything. Just the fortune cookie was very convenient. It said old friends and best friends.
Yeah.
It was, and it was. I mean, he intentionally it was this way, and there's some people who are like that too. Where she was so like annoying when she's like, "Coffee's bad for you," and like Chinese food is bad for you, and she's like doing all these drugs herself. It's like okay. It's like,
Well, and then she puts the soy sauce all over her food. It's like, come on.
I know people like that though. Like they're vegan, but everything they eat they cover in like soy sauce and salt or something. Like I'm rereading it right now. Actually, I'd forgotten how strong the like vibe is.
maybe.
Well, just like I forgot how creepy like the very end is, where he calls and Melody picks up the phone.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe the last time I read it, it didn't sink in as well for me. I mean, it's scarier than I remember it being.
She always threatened suicide in the past too.
Yeah.
That was her thing.
Yeah, he really thought he was just playing like the tough love, where he says, if she was going to kill herself, she would have. But little does he know, she already has. So you're wrong on that account.
So do we think he's gonna just go crazy now? Because I kind of it seemed like there might be some hope for him, like once he's figured it out. But I mean, if she keeps coming back and keeps coming back, he clearly was pretty disturbed.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess it's one of those. I mean, if she's gonna, if the ghost is gonna continue to return, then I don't know if anybody could really stay sane in the face of that. But
yeah, it's bad enough as a person.
Yeah.
Coming
back. How
back.
bad the haunting is.
Yeah.
I don't get it, people. If they were actually being haunted, I would just have a effing heart attack and die. Like, it's just too much. It's too much. I can't wrap my head around that. Like, my mom always said, like, if my father ever showed up to me one day, I want him to see him coming from far away, because I don't want to just flip a sheet while I'm doing laundry and have him stare me in the face because I'll have a heart attack and die. Like, that's exactly what I would do. Just ghosts, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
It seems like she's always in the shower. You can't go in the shower. That's like the one place.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure whether she is, whether the ghost is actually always manifesting, or whether at that point he's just having psychological,
But it's nowhere else that he can't go. He just can't go in a washroom that has a shower.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
It's just fear at that point.
Because he always keeps hearing the water in his head when there's no water running.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess it's hard to say, like, what's in his head and what isn't his head when it's all in his head. But, like, I get the impression that she only really haunts him when she appears and when she pops up at the end. I feel like the like, sound of water is just his paranoia.
That was my take as well. I mean,
he can't forget the image. He'll always remember it.
Yeah, I don't really have anything, I guess, solid to build it on, but that was my impression, too.
It's funny how the ghost can just pick up the phone, too, and talk. I mean, I guess it's still in his head, kind of.
Yeah.
They had cell phones that would say from Melody on the caller ID.
From Ghostmail. But this came out. The book The Shining came out like in '77. This was in between the book and the movie, but that also has like one of the most iconic, creepy bathroom scenes with all the lady in the bathtub, and then she comes out and she's dead. So I was thinking they might have been partially inspired by that, but I honestly don't remember if that was a scene in the book or that was something that Kubrick did just for the movie. Trying to make connections with creepy bathrooms.
That's a tough place not to be able to go in. I mean, at least in the kitchen, you can get takeout.
Yeah, like, I don't know what I'd do without a bathroom. A hard life.
Yeah, that's what would give me a heart attack.
Take outdoor showers in the rain or something.
Ghosts you can handle, but no bathroom.
Yeah, but if there's no bathroom.
I like to think I would pretty stubbornly get you surprisingly.
You could get used to it if it was only you can go in a washroom with a shower. That's like the
Yeah.
only.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe he could just have a bathtub.
Yeah. Or just like use like a pail and water or something, just like pour water on himself. It's like you could get around it.
I mean, he's a lawyer, right? He's got money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
He does.
And he was in a relationship with the other lawyer, right? It wasn't obvious at the start, but later on you can see.
Yeah, sort of a friends with benefits kind of thing sounded like.
Yeah. But now that's done because of his craziness. Just wanted to note, like, so this was actually adapted twice. There's a student film apparently who did this. They filmed this. That's probably impossible to get. But there's also an HBO anthology series, The Hitchhiker, that I guess one of the episodes was for Remembering Melody. So I'm gonna see if I
I'd
can
have to
find
watch that.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Also, it's adorable that there was a time where like student films could be based on George R. Martin short stories. I feel like right now, like even the worst of them sells for like $1 billion.
Yeah.
Well, I know Stephen King actually will let any student make a film of his stories for $1 as long as they don't, sell it for profits. They can have the rights to it.
Just
Oh,
an
His
artistic thing. Yeah.
short stories, yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I've seen him before. He's out and about in Maine all the time.
Wasn't he like he was run over by a car or something, and you wrote a story about that?
Yeah, he was really
That's
badly.
a whole nother podcast.
Do Stephen King stuff. I haven't read very much of him, but that'd be fun.
I've read a ton of his stuff. I'd love to. He's like the one author. We usually don't like gush over authors if they come in the store, but he's the one who I would like close the store, lock the door, and like just sit down and like, all right, I've got questions. So yeah, but I definitely up to talking about his stuff. But yeah, I did get that kind of story reminded me of like early Stephen King short story from like Night Shift or Skeleton Crew, just that creepy last paragraph where it's a ghost or the person's dead the whole time, and it was written around the same time also. But there's I really never associate him with Stephen King, but this is the first one that really showed me his just straight horror chops.
He's a good horror writer. I mean, Armageddon Rag has some scary moments. Fever Dream has some really scary moments. I mean, A Song of Ice and Fire is terrifying sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So this was in Twilight Zone magazine. Yeah, that's appropriate for this. Okay, I guess we're ready to move on to the next story. Kind of as an intermediate. I mean, we already did Sand Kings before, but this is mentioned here. We already talked about. This is some more details again from the book that I missed. Yeah, he was going to write a second Sand King story. He even wrote 18 pages. He put it aside. And at the time, he didn't think Sand Kings was his big hit. He thought his other stuff that he was writing at the time was bigger, but it's earned him more than some of his novels. And apparently there was going to plan to make a computer game for Sand Kings.
I feel like everything more than Armageddon Rag, so I don't know how meaningful the making him more than one of his novels sentence is. I think Armageddon Rag was like a
yeah, but Armageddon Rag made him a lot of money from the forward check.
Oh,
He
yeah?
didn't make any money afterwards. Like he got a big amount of money and he used that to get his house. But then afterwards,
I didn't know that.
yeah,
I thought it was just a huge bust.
it was a huge bust when it actually came out. But like the advance check for it was big.
Huh, that's
They
funny.
don't make you give that back.
No, they just don't get you again. So he was out of books for a while.
Yeah, just the royalties never caught up to it.
Yeah.
I wonder if the next Sand Kings, if he was planning like to continue like right where he left off, or just do somebody else has some Sand Kings, or maybe they're
It's
on Sand King
Shades.
planet.
Yeah, it's on AMRL, which has been mentioned before in this thing, and it says it was called Protection.
Huh. He really doesn't seem to like writing sequels.
It's harder and harder every year.
I know. Like he stopped writing Tough in like '88 and hasn't written anything since.
Yeah.
It was heartbreaking. Would you be happier if Tough Voyaging came out or if Winds of Winter came out? Or like another Tough book?
Oh, Winds of Winter.
Yeah, by a long
it's just
way.
the appetizer. It's good, but it's still.
After the series is done, after Ice and Fire is done, I think it'd be so cool to have another Tough. But in the meantime, it'd be hard not to. It definitely have to take it with a grain of salt.
I don't want to spoil Tough, like let's not go into details in it, but it would be hard to pick up where it ended, to follow it
La 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 la.
to match what it was, right? Okay. Anyways,